according to the Word that we are. Janet gave me the simple task of giving you 400 years of American history and a constitutional law refresher in about 5 minutes. So I'm going to go for it at full speed. We need to remind these senators who we are as Americans, because they seem to have forgotten that with the Mayflower Compact, the first document of self-governance, that we were established as a nation for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith. We need to remind them what James Madison said in his Memorial and Remonstrance, that basically error steeped in precedence leads to tyranny. The error of Roe v. Wade, steeped in Supreme Court precedence, has led to tyranny of our land. I'm going to give you a refresher course so that we can let these senators know that they're illogical, nonsensical, defenseless arguments as to why they're not going to put this vote to the floor. It doesn't stand according to our Constitution. You know, 94% of the quotes of the Founding Fathers contemporaneous to our nation's founding either came directly or indirectly from the Bible. Now, when I say directly, you know, they're quote scripture. But indirectly, who they quote? The two most quoted individuals were Sir William Blackstone, who wrote the commentaries on the laws of England, and Baron Montesquieu. So it's interesting to note what these men spoke about, what these Founding Fathers were quoting. Sir William Blackstone said some really interesting things. And I want to point this out, because basically what he said and what our Founding Fathers said, point out that as good as what Martin Luther King said about an immoral law, they had an even stronger point. Basically, they would have said Roe v. Wade is not law at all. Blackstone said that any law that was contrary to the laws of nature and nature's God was not law. He went on to define what the laws of nature and the laws of nature's God were. And I don't know about you, but I went all through my public education, including in my undergraduate degree, and I never once learned what the laws of nature and nature were, or that they even exist, even though it's in the thesis statement of our Declaration. You want to know what the laws of nature really is? It's the will of our Maker. You want to know what the laws of nature's God is? It is the revealed will in the Holy Scripture. Sir William Blackstone said that any law that was contrary to the will of our Maker as revealed in the Holy Scripture was not law at all. And why is that important to us as Americans? We're having this whole constitutional debate. They want to know what the Constitution says. Guess what? You can't understand, and John Quincy Adams said this, you cannot rightly divine the Constitution in the absence of the Declaration of Independence. The Constitution is our bylaws, but the Declaration is our Articles of Incorporation that give us existence as a land. So what does the Declaration say? In the thesis statement, it says that when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which tie them to another, and to acquire from among the powers of the earth that separate but equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle us. It is the thesis statement of our existence as a land and our foundation of our laws, and I don't think Thomas Jefferson was cavalier when he chose those words. I will use them, but I'll try and spare you in the heat. But, you know, when we look at this and we understand who we are as Americans, and I think we need to remind ourselves so that we can turn around and remind our elected officials so that we can let them know that, yes, the distinction between legislative power and judicial power is important. But guess what, legislators? You don't even have the freedom to make any laws if they're contrary to what God has said in His Holy Scripture. I told you that Blackstone was our second most quoted. Montesquieu was our first most quoted. What was interesting is that Montesquieu had these ideas of a framework of government. Montesquieu said, I've come up with this great idea for a government that's made up of 3 branches. Sound familiar? Think our Founding Fathers were reading him? Absolutely. You know where Montesquieu got that ideology, 3 branches, legislative, judicial, and executive? Isaiah 33:22. Read it. God is our judge. God is our lawgiver. God is our king. It is He alone who will save us. Now, he went on to say, guess what? We need checks and balances. Even with this great government, we need checks and balances. Why? Because of Jeremiah 17:9. The heart of man is wicked and deceptive. Who can know it? If we don't have checks and balances, we can have a great government, but these wicked men will not stay the course. So what are those checks and balances there for? When you read the Federalist Papers and Alexander Hamilton talked about our judiciary, when we have the Holmesian and the Warren Court basically tell us that the Supreme Court is the supreme law of the land, that is constitutional heresy. The Constitution itself says it is the supreme law of the land. And so how do they get there? They get there with this ideology that they've created through their own mouth and dicta of saying that they get to interpret what the Constitution says, and so they get to make law. Well, you know what? Alexander Hamilton had a thing to say about the powers of the judiciary when he was trying to encourage the people to ratify the Constitution. They were afraid of a strong judiciary. They didn't want the Star Chamber and seditious libel and all the oppression that they'd had with the courts in England. So he said the judiciary would necessarily be the weakest branch of the government. I think we need to remind the Ohio legislature of that as well. He said they would necessarily be the weakest branch. The only way they would ever become the strongest branch is if they wrongfully usurped legislative power. And I like to ask my students, how long is the term of a Supreme Court justice? Everybody says life, but you know what? It's life with what? Good behavior. And that has meaning. And judicial legislating is not good behavior. And you know what Alexander Hamilton said? He said the judiciary will necessarily be the weakest. The only way they ever become the strongest is if they wrongfully usurp legislative power. But he went on to say, but they will never do that because they would never dare to take authority from the very branch who has the responsibility to impeach them for such an act. Judicial legislating like Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey is an impeachable offense. It is not law, it is not binding, and it should not dictate to our Ohio legislators what they are sworn to do in upholding the Constitution. So I ask you this, what excuse do these elected senators have who have legislative power to not move and bring this bill to the floor for a vote? I tell you that the problem is not just rhinos. It's a little problem I like to call chinos, Christians in name only. The irony of the heartbeat bill is simply this. The hearts of thousands of innocent babies hang in the balance, basically dependent upon the hearts of alleged pro-life senators of Ohio. For them, we have to remind them that when the righteous are in power, the people rejoice. When the wicked are in power, the people mourn. And blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. I want to leave you with one final thought, because I can give you the most articulate speech in the world, but if it's just my words, it means nothing. Only the words of God are the words that He watches over to perform them, and they will not return void. And so this is my challenge to these Ohio senators. It's Deuteronomy 30, verse 19. I have set before you this day blessing or cursing, life or death. And guess what, senators? He gave you the answer. God Himself told you, therefore, choose life. Thank you, and God bless.